And we indeed are live this 28th day of February, which brings us to the last day of the month that we acknowledge Black History Month. And we're getting the message out that Black history is America's history. Good evening, baby queen. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well. And yourself?
I am well. It's been a busy month. It's been a busy month, and now we're going into Women's History Month. But this has been a busy month, but a good month, and I think we've been bringing some very unique topics to celebrate our presence in America, in the quilt of America's story. I'm really excited about this evening. Did you see Judas and the Black Messiah?
I have not had a chance to see it yet.
I bet after hearing Dr. G's presentation this evening, you're going to want to hurry and see it. And so Dr. G and uh, Professor Price, who's um our Black Spanish professor and department head here at NAU, and Dr. Tees, we all went and saw Judas and the Black Messiah yesterday afternoon, and it was quite different watching it on the big screen as opposed to your home television screen. And wow, it was quite emotional. I lost baby queen. I know she'll be back. But this evening we are very happy to have one of our lived Black experience uh, uh, members of this project. We all work together on to bring topics such as this, and we're doing things out in the community. Uh, Dr. Ricardo Guthrie has been in ethnic studies here at NAU. I know I've been here for 13 years, and he and his lovely uh, companion, my Sister Sean. I think they've been here for 14 years, and it's been a pleasure to be embraced. They actually were the first two people that I met when I arrived here in Flagstaff and on NAU's campus. And so it's been a pleasure to know them both and to have the honor and the privilege to be mentored and to work together with Dr. Guthrie, who's also an awesome artist. And if you are here in town in Flagstaff, and even if you are not and you've been going to the Murdoch Community Center Facebook page, and I believe we have a picture of the Murdoch Community Center maybe on our new page, but that mural that you see is the work of Dr. Guthrie. And so we're just very pleased to have him. Welcome back, baby queen.
Thank you. Apologies for that.
No, technology is not that dependable, so we stay ready to jump in. Would you like to? I like this. I give the formal introduction. I guess I was speaking of Dr. Guthrie as my brother and friend, mentor, and colleague. I will leave it to you to give the formal introduction, and I'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, welcome this evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for another Live Black Experience session. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Ricardo Guthrie, who is an associate professor of ethnic studies at Northern Arizona University. He examines political narratives of the Black press and writes about cinema as cultural political artifacts. He was lead artist for the Historical Southside Mural at the Murdoch Community Center, and most recently edited a book on Malcolm X, focused on young adult readers, written by Ebony Joy Wilkins for Capstone Press. Dr. Guthrie is Associate Professor of Ethnic Studies at Northern Arizona University. We are happy to have him joining us again this evening. Welcome, Dr. Guthrie. And it looks like you are
Hello,
on mute.
can you
There
hear
go.
me?
Yes, I can.
I'm checking to see if the sound is all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oops. All right, I had to go on that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. I can. You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Okay. I will
All
fix
right.
that before I come back for Q&A.
I can. All right. Just a few technical difficulties here. I'm playing with my screen so that you all can see what it is that I can see. And what I'll do is I'll try to share my slide, and then we'll just go from there. All right. How about that?
You're actually right now, Doctor, adding some more screens. It may help to
Sure about the
close
sound
out,
that we have here. Just want to
the
make sure
ones.
that we are actually sharing the best we can
Dr.
right now with
G,
everybody.
Dr. G,
I've got the assassination of Fred Hampton as my subject for today. And let me see if if what we have to say today is being broadcast. That's the hardest thing to figure out at this point. Hello, hello. I am not sure.
Dr. G, can you hear
Says
me?
StreamYard is sharing my screen.
Dr. G.
I'll go back over here. All right. Ms. Lewis, am I being heard? I can just continue to talk. Oh, okay. All right. I think part of it might be that I need to have some headphones on. But what I'll do is I'll go back to sharing my screen and then start from there. Okay.
Can
All
you
right.
hear us? Can you hear us without? Now can you hear me?
Looks like the rest has been frozen.
Can you hear?
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you at all.
Okay. Forgive us, everyone.
Right.
We're having some technical
the,
difficulties apparently.
And then on. How's that? Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. That works. That works very well. All right, so I'll just rearrange this just a little bit. and then we'll go from there. Okay. All right. I'll just go ahead and start. During the 1960s, African Americans living in America's largest cities could not move to the suburbs because of housing discrimination by the Federal Housing Authority, or FHA, and the banks. As a result, they were in red line districts, especially in Chicago, where our hero tonight, Fred Hampton, grew up. They were like an occupied people patrolled by the police, who abused and threatened them with arrest for the slightest offense. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was organized in Oakland, California, and around the country to protect Blacks against the occupying police force. And they became known for setting up the self-defense programs, carrying guns, and actually instituting their constitutional right to protect themselves. Now, after they had developed a program to alleviate police abuse, they also instituted housing programs, food programs, job training programs. They had a 10-point program that was designed to support the Black community during a time of occupation in the 1960s and early 1970s. They did organize armed community patrols, but they also organized food programs, medical clinics, sickle cell anemia treatment programs. And as a result, they were targeted for elimination by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and J. Edgar Hoover. The FBI's counterintelligence program, also known as COINTELPRO, had the Panthers on the top of their list of Black leaders to either jail, to eliminate, or to discredit. This is all during the 1960s in the wake of the deaths of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. So Fred Hampton and the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party emerged to try to, I think, alleviate some of the worst social, political, and economic conditions that were facing Blacks in Chicago. As a result, they got into a number of battles with the police, with the FBI, and with other political activists who may not have agreed with them. But let's back up just a little bit and talk a little bit more about who is Fred Hampton. He was a 21-year-old leader of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panthers. He was known as Chairman Fred because he was the chairman of that division of the Black Panthers, who, as I said before, were a national organization. He was indeed a revolutionary community organizer who advocated the overthrow of monopoly capitalism. He was against imperialism. He fought against colonialism in the international arena and oppression of other nations and other peoples. He advocated revolutionary progress in human relations, and between men and women in particular, between Blacks, between whites, and others in Chicago. He was also an honors student from the Chicago suburbs, Maywood. I had some cousins in Maywood who knew Fred Hampton and actually worked with him on the sickle cell anemia treatment program. So as a youth leader for the NAACP, he successfully campaigned to have a non-segregated swimming pool in his hometown of Maywood. When he joined the Illinois Black Panther Party in 1968, as a teenager, he quickly gained a reputation as a powerful speaker and as a coalition builder who fought against racial lines to fight police brutality and to address poverty in Chicago's most neglected neighborhoods. So he was notable for three things. He was charismatic. He was a great speaker and found ways of explaining complex matters in a straightforward language. He was a man of the people. He was able to bring people of different backgrounds together. He understood the purpose of politics was to create shared values and shared interests. So you could have shared values, but still be at odds with a different group of people. And he found a way to say, well, if we share the values, let's pick out specific interests that we share. Okay? So for instance, he united all the Black street gangs. we call them street gangs now, but they were uh, clubs and then became quote unquote gangs based on the harassment by the police. But originally, the Young Lords who were Puerto Ricans, the Crowns, who were a black uh, organization, the Cobras. He was able to unite these black gangs. Again, we're using the word that most people understand, but they were organized by their neighborhood, if you will. He was able to unite them across their different political backgrounds so that they became part of the Black Panther Party. Puerto Ricans, blacks, and then whites. Oh yes, he did reach out to working class whites. And in the movie, the Judas and the Black Messiah, it becomes very clear how he was able to reach across these racial lines to bring people together. He understood, again, the purpose of politics was to heighten everyone's interests and values until they could work together. He was the embodiment of Black power, Black culture, and Black consciousness during the 1960s. And he was dangerous because he modeled ethical behavior that could inspire other Black people. What was his accomplishments? He helped build the Black Panther Party in Chicago, of course, by unifying these street gangs, Blacks, Puerto Ricans, and white workers together. He helped build a revolutionary coalition across race, class, and gender. He called it the first Rainbow Coalition. That's right. I think we talk about the rainbow flag and the Rainbow Coalition of the 80s and the 90s under Jesse Jackson and many street organizers. But they actually borrowed from Fred Hampton when he called his group the Rainbow Coalition. Black, brown, red, yellow, and white. That was the first Rainbow Coalition that we knew about. He helped institute several Black Panther programs, as I mentioned before, that are now taken as innovative projects to serve the people. Breakfast programs. He recognized that people who were hungry probably didn't have much time or energy to focus on their education. So before they went to school, he would set up programs in the community where he would get stores to donate food, and he would actually have organizers cook breakfast and serve them to youngsters prior to going to school. That was one of the first preschool programs, which we understand now to being Head Start. He also had sickle cell screenings. Sickle cell is an inherited trait that many people from the Mediterranean and from Africa inherit. Sickle cell allows the red blood cells to fight against malaria. How does it do it? Because the cell becomes sickle shaped and it stops the parasite from actually circulating throughout the body. That helps in the Mediterranean. That helps around the equator. But if you're not in the Mediterranean, if you're not around malaria, it actually can be a damaging and dangerous disease because the red blood cells, once they become sickled, can clot and impede arteries and lead to death. So he said, let's screen for the sickle cell anemia trait. Not everybody who's Black has it. In fact, there are some whites and Jewish people who also inherit sickle cell. But nevertheless, Black people are typically seen as the carriers of the trait. And so Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers said, we're going to screen for sickle cell. We're also going to screen for hypertension, for diabetes. We're going to set up medical clinics, heart clinics for Black people who are affected by poor diet, lack of access to fresh vegetables, or to grocery stores in the Black community because of redlining and discrimination. So he was very powerful in the way that he set up programs that would serve the people as well as protect them against police brutality, bank discrimination, housing discrimination, job discrimination, and what we understand to be structural racism. So Fred Hampton was a very powerful person, a very young person who was very effective in bringing people together. So what happened to him? As I said before, he was the target of a counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, run by the FBI and its director, J. Edgar Hoover. It was perfectly, quote unquote, legal for what they did. They bugged the Panthers. They set them up for police raids. They instituted dirty tricks to set them against opponents in the community. And ultimately, if they couldn't destroy their reputation, they actually had them arrested, jailed, or killed. And so Fred Hampton, who was inspired by leaders such as Malcolm X, as well as Martin Luther King and others, led the Black Panther Party to do social programming and protection. As a result, he became a targeted man. And in December 1969, Fred Hampton was drugged. He was shot and killed in his bed during a pre-dawn raid in Chicago. There was a tactical unit of the Cook County State Attorney's Office, as well as the police and the FBI. Now, Fred Hampton knew that he was a target. He knew that his life was in danger, but he didn't know how much danger he was facing because his close confidant, Bill ONeil, was actually an FBI informant. He was a black man who infiltrated the Black Panther Party, took notes on them, spied on them, and provided a floor plan to the FBI and the tactical team that raided the Black Panther apartment. As we understand it, Fred Hampton was drugged. He couldn't be awakened when the shooting started. His pregnant wife, girlfriend, who was 9 months pregnant, about to give birth, said that he couldn't be moved because he wouldn't be awakened. And the police that came in, I think they killed one person, Mark Clark. They injured several others. Deborah survived and gave birth to Fred Hampton's son, Fred Jr. Bill ONeil was not there during the raid, but it turns out that ultimately he seemed to regret what he had done, being an undercover informant for the FBI. At the end of 1969, the Panthers opened up that apartment and took people on a tour to show what happened to Fred Hampton. Although the FBI and the Chicago police said that there was a shootout, in fact, at 4:30 in the morning, there was no shootout. It was a complete raid. And of the 99 bullets that were fired, only one was attributed to the Panthers. It took about 10 or 12 years for the family of Fred Hampton to sue for wrongful death. Ultimately, they were awarded $1.8 million for the death of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, but the damage was done. The Panthers were in their heyday from like 1967, 68 to about 1971 or 72. But as a result of counterintelligence programming and assassination plots and attacks by the police in New York, Chicago, Oakland, Los Angeles, the Panther Party became dysfunctional and ultimately was disbanded for a number of years. This doesn't mean that their work stopped. The individuals like Bobby Seale and others ran for political office. Many Panther leaders in their own right became politicians and began to serve the people. There are many Panther leaders, women, who came to the fore while the chairman like Fred Hampton were killed. So for many years, the Panther headquarters were run by women who had to try to fight against the perception that they were not good organizers. Actually, they were quite exceptional organizers. So what is the end result and what is the significance of telling the story of Fred Hampton? Well, for number one, it shows what you can do if you are an intelligent, committed person who wanted to benefit the Black community. It also showed someone who was very attractive and an icon in his own right, an iconic leader. And I think that was the greatest fear that they had, that he would inspire other young people to unite across race, class, gender, to fight unabashedly for liberation. Now, he called himself a Marxist, he called himself a revolutionary, and indeed he was. And today, I think those things are often seen as a negative. But back during the 1960s and early 70s, the conditions were so bad in many of these cities in terms of the police presence that it was very clear to people that they needed some type of revolutionary program. So the Black Panther Party's 10-point program was very effective in organizing people. People like Fred Hampton were very effective in uniting across racial boundaries. And the offspring of the Fred Hampton, if you will, have to be seen as the people who took up the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black Power movement to try to do many things that we now see as being part of a progressive agenda. And if you get a chance, I would encourage you, one, to see Eyes on the Prize, a special segment on Fred Hampton and the Chicago Black Panthers. One of the segments that I like to watch is called Eyes on the Prize Part 2, A Nation of Law. Eyes on the Prize by Henry Hampton, not related to Fred Hampton. It was a very effective documentary series that is still available. I do recommend that you see Judas and the Black Messiah, a very popular film that came out last year. And it's very effective in showing the articulate leaders of the Black Panther at that time. And also, I recommend that you pay attention to some of the new documentaries that have come out called Who Killed Malcolm X? That's on Netflix. And also there's a film called MLK/FBI, which explains more about the counterintelligence programs, the police informants, and the undercover agents who infiltrated all of the Black power organizations at the time to try to discredit them, to jail them, and if those two things didn't work, to actually kill them. So there's a number of studies that have shown in the wake of the counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, many of the Black leaders that we look to and read about today ultimately were removed from power. Now, this isn't to say that there wasn't progress through the electoral arena, through education, through Black studies programs, through housing programs, civil rights programs. This isn't to say that that isn't also effective, but it is to say a whole generation of Black leaders, like Fred Hampton, were removed from the scene. And the way they did it, in many ways, would say be morally and ethically problematic to infiltrate a program that was trying to do civil rights, for instance, and to set its leaders up for death or assassination. That was the game plan. And it's kind of curious because most people didn't know the counterintelligence program was in effect until later. How did they find out? In 1971, a band of undercover radicals infiltrated an FBI office in Pennsylvania. They found reams of thousands of pages of documents that were describing the counterintelligence program. They also found many anti-war informants and others who had infiltrated the progressive movement at that time, the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society, and other organizations that had been infiltrated. And so they took these thousands of pages of documents and had them published through the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. And it just blew the cover off of this COINTEL program. There were congressional hearings. They did set up some committees to investigate the deaths of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and many other leaders. And the program was officially disbanded. COINTELPRO and the FBI disbanded the program by the mid-1970s. It's not to say that they don't also have informants now or other counterintelligence programs, but the official COINTELPRO was ended. And as I mentioned before, at the end of approximately 10 or 12 years, the family of Fred Hampton was able to, and Mark Clark was able to recoup $1.8 million in a settlement. I think that ultimately we can open it up for a discussion and do some follow-up here among our colleagues here in the Live Black experience. Okay. I see. There's a history of reconstructing Black protests and activism as anarchy, mob action, and criminal violence. What is the threat of Black activism, particularly unifying efforts like the Rainbow Coalition? So there is definitely a history of reconstructing or reimagining Black protests and activism as something that is chaotic or a mob action or criminal even. And they do that because I think ultimately people don't understand the depths of the problems that are faced by people in marginalized communities. And so to fight back against injustice often incites an extreme reaction by the status quo itself. The threat of Black activism is that it may inspire others who are not Black, but who also have grievances against oppression or discrimination at the micro and the macro level. Black activism is a threat precisely because it allows people to unify along culture and consciousness and not just along race. I think that's the great misnomer about some of these political movements, that ultimately there's an attempt to unify based on the interests that they might share beyond race and racism. The Rainbow Coalition was one of the more effective coalitions, I think, that were available to the Black community. And as I said, that was one of the reasons why someone like Jesse Jackson and others took that idea that people who are of different races and backgrounds could unify in the way that the rainbow could unify across different colors. Mm-hmm. I see we have some other comments and questions. How do we understand a man like William ONeil, who's portrayed as a conflicted figure tortured by his participation in counterintelligence programs and the assassination of Fred Hampton? Excellent question. When we look at someone like Bill ONeil, he's a person who was a small-time criminal. He had a police record. He was susceptible to influence. He would have been jailed and sent away for a variety of crimes that the police had presented to him. And they gave him an option. They said, we want you to be an undercover agent for us to infiltrate the Chicago chapter of the Black Panthers. And if you do that, we will expunge your record. We'll clean it up. And so ultimately, someone like Bill ONeil thought, well, okay, I'm not political. I don't want to go to jail. Maybe I can just spy on this person and give them some information. So I think ultimately the film is very good in showing Bill ONeil as someone who was trying to escape prison by infiltrating and I think what we call is snitching on others. Initially, though, he didn't see it that way. He just said, I'll just spy on them. Ultimately, as it went along, it turned out that he actually began to admire Fred Hampton and the Panthers. I think in his mind, he was actually helping the Black community by trying to keep the dangerous elements away from the Black community. So I think in his mind, he might have thought that he was doing a good thing by trying to provide information to the police to keep law and order. I think later he found out that the police actually weren't interested in law and order, but in eliminating Black leadership. And that's where the torture or conflicted nature of someone like Bill ONeil comes to the fore. He provides a floor plan of Fred Hampton's bed so that they know where he is sleeping. And he is unavailable at the time of the raid, so he can't be tied to the action. And then later he finds out that someone like Fred Hampton was actually had noble and moral and ethical values that were needed. And for this, I think his conflict, if you will, was between his realization that he led to the death of this man, Fred Hampton, who he actually admired. The film is very good in that, and Lakeith, who's the actor, plays it very well. Yeah. Maybe I'm digging a little, but events like this seem to suggest a threat of Black leaders to something inherent to established systems in our nation's history. Am I wrong? So is there a threat of Black leaders? Is there something inherent to established systems? Well, there are two thoughts. Again, one thought is that this is part of the American culture to which Blacks are a part, and we can be liberators or we continue to be part of the oppressors. There is definitely a sense there that if you conform to the American status quo, you may indeed be leading to your own death, your own disfigurement, and your own oppression. There is a presumption that Black leaders are, I think, resistant to the status quo. And there's a reason. It's because we still haven't really recovered from the slavery and the post-slavery Jim Crow period. It was only 50 or 60 years ago that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were passed. And they were incomplete, if you will. There was a period of time, just like after Reconstruction, maybe 10 or 12 years, in which the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act led to increased levels of political involvement, as well as some changes in housing, health, jobs, education. That was real. But after 1972 or 73, there was I think a retrenchment of the progress. And many of our critical race scholars actually document that. The laws were beginning to turn against the people. The political changes that had been instituted for better health, better environment, regulatory of discrimination. Many of those were overturned by 1980 with the election of Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. And there was 2 or 3 administrations, if you will, back to back, 12 years, in which many of the accomplishments of the civil rights movement were turned back. So any Black leader who stood up to say, well, maybe there's an inherent problem, right, in the way the system is structured along racial lines and class lines that make it very difficult, if not impossible, to be a Black leader, right, without actually confronting injustice. So I would say ultimately you're not wrong in saying the threat of Black leaders is that they're going to, 1, fight for the truth, and 2, point out the social and political and economic inequities. And I think most leaders, even elected officials, have to confront that conflict or contradiction in terms of the way the society operates. Oh, so what does a figure like Fred Hampton symbolize in today's society? I think it's 2 things. 1, I think he symbolizes the power of youthful energy or inspiration, if you will. I'm not saying everything that Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers did was right. I do know, however, that he was correct in trying to identify structural problems of racism, particularly among the occupying police forces. There's no question about it. The police at that time, in the late 60s and early 70s, were largely white. There were very few Black, Puerto Rican, indigenous police officers on the force throughout the nation. And at that time, the Panthers point out very correctly that they were being occupied by people who ultimately didn't have their best interests at heart. So he symbolizes the inspirational leaders who would point out problems and then to do something about this. In a post-George Floyd society, a post-Breonna Taylor society, the lessons that we can learn are that you may not always be able to change the system in a way that is positive or progressive, but you do have to always point out the inadequacies of that system. I think he was a man also, if I will, who was willing to look at individuals who were trying to change. That was his attempt to reach out to whites who didn't understand that Black people were oppressed in the ways that they were as well. He reached out to Puerto Ricans and Chicanos, Latinos, who may not have understood that they had a unifying values and interests. And he also reached out to women because he said, you know, ultimately the revolution, as he called it, would be led by women and their offspring. Now, again, he's trapped in a 21-year-old mindset back in 1969 and 1970. But it's really kind of inspiring to hear what he has to say, both in the documentary films and in the film called Judas and the Black Messiah. In a post-George Floyd, post-Breonna Taylor society, in which no-knock raids still happen, Amir Locke in Minnesota was killed by a no-knock police force who came in and was trying to arrest somebody, not him. And of course, he had a legal right to have a gun, but the police shot him dead because they saw the gun and assumed that he was going to fire back on them. So in our society today, these lessons, I think, are still useful to us. Again, without just making him a heroic figure. All right, so question number 4, why do we not give credit to the Black Panther Party for their work on social programs? As I said before, the Panthers were one of the first to do breakfast programs, Head Start programs, medical clinics, transportation clinics. They even got into voter registration, voter education. Nobody really thinks about that because once you pick up the gun, that's all people remember. And I think it was a tactical decision on their part to start with self-defense and then move to social programs. I think that people don't give credit to them precisely because they are understood to have been trying to fight force with force, right? To fight guns with guns. And I think typically we have this notion that if you do that, then you are inherently violent and you can't get anything accomplished in a society that that relies upon social change using constitutional methods. Of course, you have a constitutional right to own guns and to defend yourself from attack. But again, that becomes the stigma that remains to this day. We still think of Malcolm X as the violent one and King as the nonviolent one, and the Panthers as a violent group, as opposed to the NAACP. But the reality is both groups and both approaches were working inside of a very violent society. Oh, can we speak to the gun laws that come into play after the Black Panthers started carrying them? Yes, indeed. The Panthers were very shrewd. They said, you know, we have a constitutional right to bear arms. And so in Oakland, they set up gun clubs. They did training using Vietnam War veterans to organize a military unit to protect the Black community. And yes, they were entitled a constitutional right to carry guns. Until when? Well, they took their guns to the floor of the California Assembly and said, we are here to protect our rights to bear arms. And of course, the very next week, there was a law that were banning the open display of guns that the Panthers had advocated. So many times when we talk about the gun laws that come into play and restricting them, it was okay to restrict the use of guns if a group like the Black Panthers had them, but it was somehow okay if militia in the borders were allowed to carry guns to patrol the borders. And again, it's a question of the racism that we see in the laws that are typically used to repress us. But you're right, the gun laws that have come into play after the Panthers started carrying them, very clear connection between them coming to the California Assembly to exercise their constitutional right and seeing them under attack for doing that. Okay, as Kara has said, we can't talk about a figure like Fred Hampton without talking about the actions of the Chicago police and the FBI. And we now acknowledge that it was a political assassination. Could something like this happen today? Are things like this still happening? After I was watching the film, The Judas and the Black Messiah, I was told by many people in Ferguson, St. Louis, in Dakota during the pipeline demonstrations, the marches for Trayvon, marches in Louisville on behalf of Breonna, and nationwide during the Black Lives Matter movements of 2020 and the blowouts. I was told by many people in each of those cities that there were still informants, there were still undercover actions, there were still people who were targeted for elimination or discrediting or just violent attacks. I was told that that was still happening, and that in each of these demonstrations, they had found, the police that is, had found methods that were very similar to the surveillance that Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X had endured during the 1960s. So here we are, 40 or 50 years later, and we're still seeing the police actions that are designed to disrupt, to discredit, and also ultimately set people up for death. There are many people who were leaders on the ground in St. Louis, in Ferguson, who have died under mysterious circumstances. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist in that way, but according to the street organizers who have talked about what has happened in the wake of these political movements, it's very clear that political assassination, personal attacks, etc., are still happening. And not because of the FBI instituting a counterintelligence program, but because the police at the local level have been empowered with arsenal of weapons and surveillance devices that are unprecedented. They can do far more using the web and the internet to try to surveil people in ways that are just common today. We all have cell phones, and we all use social media platforms that are open to surveillance. Okay, so with these kinds of threats to Black survival, Black lives, Black activism, and coalitions for change among peoples of color, where do we maintain hope? How and where? And what do we need our brothers and our sisters and our neighbors and our allies, accomplices to understand and to do? I think ultimately this was one of the things that I noted from a writer like Kesey Layman, Laymon, fabulous writer from Mississippi. He's in Jackson, Mississippi. Used to work in the Northeast at Vassar and then returned to his hometown in Jackson. He said ultimately, to be the son or the offspring, this next generation of writers, of leaders, that ultimately we have to still have hope. We still have to uphold love and compassion, empathy and sympathy for each other. Even though we may not have always agreed politically, he is the embodiment of trying to maintain hope for the next generation. And I think we saw that in the spring and the summer of 2020. We saw that people were actively trying to figure out an answer to police brutality, to extrajudicial murder, to incarceration far above the national average or even the world average. We saw people who were hopeful to say, if we can get in the streets, we can overcome our differences, we can make something happen in a progressive way. And so I saw that, I think, in the spring and the summer of 2020, but I also saw the pushback that led to the January 6th storming of the nation's capital. So there was a resistance, right, among people of many different races, backgrounds, genders, etc., who were coming together in a hopeful way. Everybody wanted to know, what should I be reading? What should I be doing? Is it enough to hold up a sign, Black Lives Matter, or to watch a football player kneel Of course, those symbolic actions were very significant because it showed a level of allyship, of empathy, sympathy, and compassion that we hadn't seen in a long time. I'll say this. When I was a 18, 19, 21-year-old, we had the anti-apartheid movement. We had people trying to divest from South Africa. We were trying to liberate the frontline states in Africa and other colonies around the world. That was real, and we got success. Nowadays, people are trying to fight against global warming, for climate change. It's a very difficult struggle to wrap your arms around. But if you see people in the street marching for combating global warming, marching for police reformation, some people would say even abolishment of police. I think what they're really talking about is trying to change what it means to be a police officer, to be a peaceful person instead of an occupying force. For me, that's what abolition means, as opposed to eliminating all the police in our neighborhoods. Although, again, this is for the debate. We maintain hope because I think by raising the questions of what we need to do leads to some collective action and collective debate over what we can do to change the world. I think that's his legacy. A role for the Black Panthers. I think I still see a role for Black Panthers today because they were the embodiment of Black culture, Black consciousness, and Black power in all of its aspects. The political power that you have to have people who represent you, the economic power so that you can control your destiny by running your own businesses or building your own houses or trying to control your own food. That is happening in places like Detroit, New Orleans, Atlanta, many parts of the South, where people are banding together because they realize they have to do for themselves. So a Black Panther collective, if you will, is the embodiment of that consciousness, of that self-determination, of the 10-point program that is still in great need today for land, food, housing, jobs, freedom from occupation, freedom from death and incarceration, freedom from being forced to go fight overseas in battles that are not of our choosing. Those 10-point programs still work, I think, for building together coherent political programs that affect the Black community in particular, but other communities of color in general. So again, we are stigmatized, I think, by the history that says the Panthers were gun-toting revolutionaries who were misogynistic, patriarchal thugs. I think that is the common conception of a Black power leader, in particular the Panthers. And there were people within that movement who fit that bill. But you also have to understand many of those people were financed, supported, infiltrated by the FBI and the local police. They were designed to be thugs and to destroy the movement. And again, I think that's part of the legacy that we need to unpack and look at very, very coherently. Yes.
Can you hear us,
I
Dr.
think we
Guthrie?
got one of our, all right, there we are. One of our coordinators is trying to get back into the show.
I don't think he can hear
Having
us.
a lot of
I
problems
did
with
see
the
one
internet
more
today.
question came in.
Oh, there you are.
Let's see. Is that it?
All right. Are you guys able to speak? I'm not able to hear you, but all right. Can you speak to the women in the movement? Yes, of course. I think this is something that Reverend Lewis and others have mentioned before, that many of the Panther leaders, they were recruited by and large from conscious women. And as I said, most of the Black Panther chapters were run by women. When Bobby Seale came to talk to us in the early parts of the, I think 2010, 2011, he said he was very proud to train the women leaders who took over. he said there was no question that they were better leaders than the men, oftentimes, who were just posturing. And Elaine Brown and many others ran for political office and kept the Panthers together during the time when Bobby Seale and others were incarcerated or on the run. So he said it was kind of a contradictory understanding that you have of the Panthers, that the women in the movement came to the fore, and they were not happy to be just sitting in the background. Again, this shows up in the film Judas and the Black Messiah, that the criticisms were real. The Panthers did need to have they need to have some re-education, if you will. Angela Davis said the same thing. She said there was just too much of the misogyny and the thuggishness that she saw. But it didn't mean that she was no longer a Panther. It didn't mean that she didn't support people like Fred Hampton. But she said that just like the criticism that we need to have about the role of women in the movement, that still continues today. And you can see it in movements like Say Her Name, which said, ultimately, we are ready to stand up for people who have been shot down and killed, but we don't always see that when it's a woman or a transgender person or someone who doesn't fit the paradigm. And we need to learn from that. I think that's one of the better questions we've tried to face today. Yes, women in the Panthers need to be a special LBE program for sure. All right, we all do that. We'll raise a fist for the fallen and those that will be raised up. Go ahead.
Sister Kara, do you want to go ahead and I'm going to ask the brother if he has any last words for us right now. Uh-oh, he left us. I think he probably knows that we're at the end. Let me see if this will bring him back up for us. Any closing words of wisdom? And let's see if we can. I don't know if he's still watching or not. I've enjoyed this evening. And I really wish that everyone will watch Judas and the Black Messiah. And yes, definitely, we do need to come back with women of the party because brother, or really chairman, and everyone called him chairman.
I was trying to get my microphone on to see if it worked. I'm not sure if it works.
Can you hear me? Us?
I still can't hear you. So I apologize for the technical problems. I've put on my headset to see if it'll work, but
I'm trying.
Nothing doing. What? Okay. Closing words of wisdom. All right. I may not be able to get my microphone to work, but if you can hear me, then let's go from there. Check, 1 2 1 2. All right. So closing words of wisdom. I think, as I mentioned before, I think there's a lot of people who have learned from the past and they're preparing for the future. So what that means is ultimately we use the arts, culture, literature, music that we have available to us in ways that we did not have as recently as 10 or 15 years ago. And that's awesome. I think that is actually the future that we can look forward to, using webinars like this, and also some of the social platforms which we can leverage to our benefit. It doesn't mean that we all have to be TikTok or Instagram experts or come on shows like this and speak. We have to be able to use whatever arts and culture we have available to us. And I still believe in the power of the pen as a journalist. So my words of wisdom are, wherever you are, whatever you think you are, whether you're an engineer or an artist or an educator, you have to use whatever platforms available to you to try to change other people's minds. And ultimately, I think it's about keeping your hope and love for the people together. Um, Fred Hampton was a man of the people, and he was inspired, ironically, by actions of love and ethics. And that's kind of people think that's really a soft-hearted thing to try to look forward to. And we want to be more, militant and aggressive, etc. But ultimately, that's what comes through for someone like Fred Hampton, that he was inspired by feelings of ethical behavior and for love for the people. He said he wanted to live for the people. He didn't want to just die for the people. That would be my, I think, closing remarks. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I as we come to the end of this, I am just so grateful for our brother, and we definitely do need to come back with the women of the party, because his mother or his significant other would go on to bear a male child, and the party still exists today in Chicago. And so we need to carry that story on. Sister Kara, any closing words as we prepare to end our Black History Month series?
Yeah, uh, I just want to say thank you to Dr. and to our audience for participating, and seeing that despite technical difficulties, despite many roadblocks that get thrown up when it comes to discussing these sorts of matters, we as a people are resilient, and we keep on keeping on. And we will keep on keeping on through these discussions and more, as we continue bringing these sessions to our community, as we continue engaging and welcoming others to partner with us in this work. So we thank you to those who joined us tonight, and we hope that this will serve as both an inspiring conversation and an inspiring symbol of that resiliency in our community. And with that, I think we say, as always, Miss Bernadine,
Go in grace.